Hey everyone, John here. Welcome back to another Sapphire tutorial. This time I'm going to break down the Stuck in the Gate Sapphire Effect preset, and I'm going to show you how to set some keyframes to make it animate correctly, and also how to use it as a matte to reveal some text to create a really nice looking title. So here in After Effects, I've got this great footage of a projector. So this is perfect for this look. So I'm going to just apply S-Effect just by dropping that onto the shot. This is 4K footage. Load preset, and in Sapphire 2026, you'll find it in the new category. If you're using a later version, just do a search up here in search presets. But you're looking for Stuck in the Gate, which is this one here. Okay. Now, looking at the thumbnail, you may think, how am I going to use that? And that's exactly why I'm doing this tutorial. You'll see just how easy it is to make this look really good. So I'll click load. And if I just move the timeline there, not really much is going on, right? I mean, obviously the footage is playing back, but there's nothing actually happening here. A couple of things to look out for as far as the UI goes are these control points here. There's one for Flash 2, FilmBurn Flash 2, and there's one for FilmBurn Flash 1. Now we'll look at these again in a moment and they'll make a bit more sense. But that's basically the position of those flashes. All of the key controls are made available here in the host for this Sapphire effect. And we'll look at these in a moment when we set some keyframes. But I just want to dive into Effect Builder by clicking on Edit Effect and just look at one thing in particular that you can't choose in the host, which is the presets for Sapphire Film Effect. And we'll also look at some parameter linking setup. Okay, so once again, it looks like a fairly complex effect, and it kind of is, especially this stuff going on over here, but don't worry about it. I've tried to make this preset as user-friendly as possible. You just really don't have to be worried too much about what's going on with it. And that's really why I made this tutorial, to show you how easy it is to use. Okay, so Sapphire Film Effect. If we have previous selected node selected, so clicking on source shows us the source. Clicking on the next effect in the stack is Sapphire Film Effect. So that will show me the preset that I have applied for Film Effect. And the only way I can choose a different preset is to come here into Effect Builder. So if I click on Load Preset, I'll just choose this one here and click Load. Okay. So that's the base look with the source and the film effect applied. Now, the only other thing I want to point out here, other than the sticky notes, which give you some pointers, and I'm covering these things anyway, is these lines, okay, parameter links. There's a few things going on here. And in 2026, Sapphire 2026, you have these parameter linked lines. And also, when I roll over, you can see the pop-up that shows what's linked to what and what's driving what. I just want to very simply as possible break this down for you. What's going on here with FilmBurn, Sapphire FilmBurn, is we're only using Flash 1 and Flash 2. You can see everything else is deselected. And if I tool open Flash 1, you can see most of it is green. So Flash 1 is doing most of the driving in this case. If I click on the stopwatch, you can see Make Driver is selected. And what it's basically doing is driving a lot of Flash 2, and it's also driving this Sapphire FilmBurn, which is the matte version, okay? You can see if I tool open Flash 1, a lot of red, okay? So they're being controlled or being driven. And if you want to get a quick overview of what's going on, just drag over these, over the UI here, over these lines, and it'll tell you what's being driven by what and what's driving what, okay? You don't have to change any of these links, just leave them as they are. One thing I will do though, looking at this again, I did notice that for Flash 1, seed, which is a driver, is actually unchecked. And because that's a driver, that should be checked. That'd be handy to have in the host. With that done, I'm going to click OK. I don't have any keyframes yet, so that's all fine. All right, so what we'll do next is just set a couple of keyframes and see what this is really intended to do. So the two parameters that we want to animate are FilmBurn's brightness and size. So I'll come to 0 seconds, tool open FilmBurn, and I'm going to change brightness to 0. And this will give us the look without any film burn. This is just the FilmEffect preset that we just applied. So what I'll do is I'll set a keyframe for that at 0 seconds as well. Just hit U here in After Effects to show that keyframe. Come to 2 seconds, and I'm going to change that to 10. And this blows that right out to white. If we just drag back, you can see it's pretty blown out. You might start to notice just on those first few frames how the film starts to warp a little bit and then starts to burn out. So it's getting there, but we need to adjust the size. It's too big. So once again, at 0 seconds, what I'll do is I'll set a keyframe for size and make that 0.5. So just a slight adjustment there. And at 2 seconds, I'll make that 0.6. A little bit bigger. You can see that nice burning effect there. So 0.6. And that burns that almost out, but there's a little bit left over. So that's why we have this fade to white. And this is using the offset darks. So I'll set a keyframe here and just move ahead a little bit. And I want to increase the offset darks until that goes to white. Just enough to make that to go to white. So if you want it to go fully to white, that's how you do it. So we get to that stage there. And it might be good if those just overlap a little bit so that that fade to white just starts a little bit earlier while we've still got some movement happening. And there we go. And if I just drag through that slowly, you can see how we're getting that nice warping effect. And it's a little more localized around the flashes. So once again, this is flash 2 over here and flash 1 over here. And I like that. Just that initial sort of warping of the film without having, too much distortion really sells this effect. And then it starts to burn a bubble, and then it starts to burn through. I think that works quite well. And with that in place now, we can move these center points. So center point 1, you can see how in the parameters here that's changing. So you can see that center point 1. So we can, fine tune the position of those, change the look up a little bit, depending on your footage, and where you want these points to be. You could even join them together just to make one big blob. And you can do all that independent of the keyframes. If you only want one flash, make sure you turn it off under FilmBurn, but also turn it off under FilmBurn matte. So now I've only got flash 2. Okay, so I'll turn those back on. And all of the other settings are just for you to fine tune, just to customize this to taste, okay? And depending on the footage that you're using. So what we'll do next is we'll use this, we'll duplicate it, and I'll show you how to set it up as a matte so we can reveal a title. Okay, so I've just added in a text layer here in After Effects. And what I want to do is not mess up my keyframes. We've already seen how inside of the effect builder, if you add an effect or if you add a host parameter, it will give you a message saying any keyframes will be deleted. And I don't want to do that because I've already set this up. And there is a way I can do that. Let's take a look. So first of all, I'll just duplicate this layer because I'm going to use the duplicate as the matte. I'll just solo that and launch the builder by clicking on Edit Effect. Now, I would have done this in the host parameters, but one of these effects, Film Look, doesn't have any parameters in the host, and I have to adjust one of these, which is Scale Brights. So I will bring that down to 0, and now we have black. And the only other thing I have to do is come to my Fade to White, which is Hue Sat Bright, and bring the saturation down to 0. Okay, so that's all I've done. Click OK. No error message, black and white matte. And we can come into Fade to White and we can adjust the offset dark. So I'm going to remove that keyframe and, I can bring that down and make that a little darker. Okay. So that's my matte. And all I need to do is just, for Stuck in the Gate here in After Effects, just choose that layer as my matte layer. And I need to turn on the layer. and just fine tune that a little bit more. You can see we're still seeing it a little bit through here. So I'll just adjust those offset darks like that. We still have our keyframes in there. So now we get the reveal. Nice, right? Now I'm just going to switch across to a version I've already set up. So I've got exactly the same thing going on here. But what I've also done in this case is I've applied Sapphire GradientRadial to the text. So we had black text, but I've just made it inner color of orange and outer color of white. And I've just keyframed the brightness for that. So just to have it a little brighter at the front, so it's a little blown out, and just brightness down to 0, so it's no longer visible. And there's also a bit of UltraGlow on an adjustment layer above that. And that's above everything, of course, so everything gets a little bit of glow. Just makes it all feel a little more integrated. And I think there's one more thing we can do to this, actually, is add a bit of distortion. So what would be good is if I apply Sapphire Distort. Distort. Just drop that onto the text. It's going to look quite weird to start with. What we'll do for the lens is we'll choose the matte. And also in After Effects here, make sure that I've got effects and masks selected. You can see it's already working there. Probably a good idea to use the fine mode and just increase the amount. And see those edges are starting to warp now. Maybe decrease the blur lens, just like that. So now we get that little bit of melting of the text, or unmelting in this case, as it gets revealed. So just by a couple of minor tweaks, even after we've set up our keyframes, we created a matte, and we've done quite a dramatic text reveal. And one other minor change we could make that would make this look even better. So come back to UltraGlow, twirl open Atmosphere, because this glow here is all a little bit uniform. But if we were to turn on Atmosphere and just increase the atmosphere amplitude, now we get more burning happening in more random places. I think that looks a little better. Doesn't seem to affect the FilmBurn look too much. Turn that on and off. If anything, it probably helps a little bit. And just makes that look a little bit more irregular, a little more realistic. Now, if you'd like me to go into any more detail, please leave a comment. You can learn more about Sapphire and all of the other Boris Effect products on boriseffects.com, where you can also download free trials. For now, this is John. See you in the next tutorial.